It is my honor to start off today with a little bit of reflection from yesterday. Yesterday we looked back an entire year to the 2022 forum. This time it's going to be a little bit easier because we only have to look back one sleep. Yesterday, a lot of our conversations happened in our action squads as we broke out covering in-depth topics on the Black Homeownership Initiative, serving immigrants and refugees, working with justice-involved individuals, helping Microenterprise get off the ground, and serving youth and young people. Those conversations couldn't have happened without key facilitators and awesome folks in the room. So I would like to invite Tierra, Cristina, Serra, Derek Lane, Erwin, Reeves, and John McKenney to get up here and take a seat. So I'm going to ask each of them to monologue. Kidding. I'm going to ask each of them to give their reflections on their learning, some of their takeaways from the learning yesterday, and then we're going to open it up to the group, see if anyone is brave and wants to share their learnings, their connections, and what they're excited about. So if you have things to shout out, hang on, we'll get you a microphone, but let them talk first. First and foremost, in the Black Homeownership Initiative, I hear that there was wonderful conversations with some experts in the room. Tierra, tell us a little bit, not a play-by-play. We don't have time. What were some of your takeaways? What stood out to you? What are you happy to have been in the room to hear?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. So in the Black Home Ownership Initiative, we talked about some of the barriers and resources around Black home ownership. There were so many takeaways, but I'll listen to Ryan. And for me, the whole conversation just kind of solidified what I do, which is helping people on the credit side of things get into home ownership. So it let me know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, which was nice. But in the spirit of this year's theme for Bank On, fostering financial belonging, there were two things that got brought up a lot. One being changes that need to be done in underwriting. And I specifically asked Darius Toston, what do we need to do to create trust for Black families when it comes to home ownership? And one thing he mentioned is encouraging young folks to get involved in underwriting so that we can create a more diverse team when it comes to underwriting. As a Black person, it's frightening going to a lender and telling them your whole life about your finances, and when you can do that with someone that looks like you or might know what you're talking about, it makes the process a little bit more comfortable. So changes in underwriting. And then the second thing to foster financial belonging was partnerships. So we talked about what can we do to create successful partnerships, and we also heard this in the last session yesterday from Jennifer and Erwin. But one thing that came up, let's see these notes, from Marty was having a shared mission. So connecting with organizations, connecting with individuals that have that shared mission for Black home ownership, those that understand the barriers and the resources that are needed, and working together. And it made me just think, if this was a small mission, we could do it by ourselves, but because it is such a huge mission, we have to rely on our partners, which are individuals and other organizations, so that we can get the work done. So changes in underwriting, a more diverse team, and then creating those successful partnerships.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tierra. I appreciate that. I heard a lot of great, yes. A lot of excitement, a vision of the future, the next team of underwriters and partnerships with a shared vision. Wonderful. Moving down the line to Cristina, you made the trek over to Grey Wolf in the Immigrants and Refugees Action Squad. Also, Cristina is one of the people who came up with the wonderful name of Action Squad, so everyone give her another round of applause. Cristina, what were some of your takeaways? What stood out to you from that conversation?
Well, good morning, everyone. So it was really interesting as I hear Tierra mention about her action squad, because there were a lot of common threads, and one of them is really just trying to build trust in the communities. And it is really difficult for immigrants and refugees that are coming from lifetimes of things that they've learned and that they're so well prepared to do in their home countries, and into a completely strange and foreign world here in the US. And so they're capable, they know what they're doing, they just don't know how to do it here. And so it's really coming at it from the provider's perspective as just listening, taking them into consideration, being empathetic about what they're struggling with, and building that trust so that they can then be more comfortable in sharing their story and getting your help. Culturally, for some of them, it's difficult to ask for help outside of what they know, and they come from so many different backgrounds. So it's really just ensuring that community partners are aware of the needs that are out there, having the opportunity for those folks to see representation in those organizations, at those banks, people that look like them, that speak the same language, so that they really feel even more comfortable to seek services. So yeah.
That was a very succinct overview of an in-depth conversation. Building trust with our clients is a part of every service world. And I know that it is a value that we all share of making sure that we serve our clients, but taking that extra care of knowing that the person that we're talking to is an expert in their own right, and there is still learning to do. I love it. Thank you, Cristina. Moving on down to Derek, my buddy Derek. Derek also made the trek over to Grey Wolf to help conversate in supporting justice-involved individuals. I know that we had some powerhouse people in that room, so tell me a little bit about your takeaways from that conversation.
Sure, yes. I want to begin by giving a shout out to the powerhouse people. I think Becky is still at the house. She was our co-facilitator and fearless leader. There she is.
Is your mic on?
I don't know. Let's see.
Oh, it might not be.
Might not be. There we go. Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Give it one more try.
Now? There we go. Okay. Yes. I wanted to begin by giving a shout out to our co-facilitator and fearless leader, Becky House. She's waving her hand in the back again. And my, where is Mima?
Possibly in the other room.
She is. So we got to give a shout out to her. She was our timekeeper. And she had a rough time with us. It was tough because we had great conversation, and and our panelists as well, Mashuk, Raman, and Anthony Blankenship. I don't know if Anthony is still here or not. And a great conversation. It wasn't just educational, it was inspirational, because there were a number of individuals that were not only a part of the panel, but also a part of our audience that were formerly incarcerated, and they could bring to bear some real life experiences on the conversation as well. A couple of things we discussed or shared or talked about was the need for advocacy for those that are powerless and voiceless that are part of the system. And we also discussed potential resources that could be available once those who are formerly incarcerated are freed. And we also discussed the transition, how difficult it is and challenging for those who are formerly incarcerated to re-enter. And one of the things that we concluded, in fact, I think I wrote it down, someone commented on the fact, how can we bridge the gap between incarceration and services available to help those that are formerly incarcerated? And I remember one of the final comments someone had said, I think from our panel, was how do we give them hope, right? And that sort of kind of crystallized and became the theme around what it was we were really discussing and trying to achieve. How do we give those that are formerly incarcerated hope for tomorrow and transition from life behind bars to a life back home? So that's pretty much a summary of what we discussed in our Justice Involved initiative.
I got tingles just from your summary. Thank you. Yes. The power of lived experience, the power of shared advocacy, and the power of hope. I think those are all very a worthwhile conversation. Thank you, Becky. Speaking of timekeepers, we would be nothing without our timekeepers, everyone. Rolling on down the line, John McKenney, you made the trek to stay in this room for the conversation of supporting youth and young people. I know I was the timekeeper in that room, so
You did a great job. Thank you.
I attempted to keep the conversation wrangled. John, tell me a little bit about your experience in this group.
You betcha. So first, it was essentially split in half. We had the first part where Milady Garcia discussed a lot about FEP, as well as a lot of the resources that they can provide. And then the second half was a long discussion as well. So FEP is the Financial Education Public-Private Partnership. They are a nonprofit organization created by the Washington State Legislature to advocate and provide financial education resources and professional development training for teachers across the state. Milady Garcia is the Special Populations Program Supervisor, sorry. And she presented basically letting us know a lot of the statistics and data on our state's unhoused and unhome and unaccompanied youth, the data that kind of links that to foster care as well. We learned about the foster to homeless pipeline, as well as the foster to prison pipeline. And we also discussed a lot about our migrant youth, the impact of economic hardship on student success, and at the latter end of that, it went into a discussion on equity, a holistic approach, a dual language approach, and a culturally relevant financial education approach to providing financial education. So we also discussed some of the barriers to financial wellness that our BIPOC youth face due to inequities in the education and financial systems. And then for the latter half of the conversation, Monica and Minda led us on a very, I think, appropriate and very fitting conversation. They modeled it after the Michelle Obama conversation, where essentially she just kind of sat down and they both discussed things. And it was a very heartfelt conversation, and I think that some of the main concepts that really came from that was the importance of not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, making connections with community leaders in the communities where we all need to be connecting with. And so if these are community leaders who have already established those trusted relationships with those community members, that's a route that we can kind of go to hopefully find a way to bring that equitable and holistic approach of financial education to that public. And also as well, the importance of meeting our students or anyone in our participating in financial education, meeting them where they are. And not just assuming that they are at a certain point, but essentially meeting them where they are, as well as checking yourself before you step into that realm, and really being realistic about the expectations that you move forward with.
Awesome. Thank you, John. I love the phrase meeting people where they are, both physically going to the places where communities meet, but also emotionally and mentally, what is the piece that you know that you want to grow into. I love that. Thank you, John. Over there, way over there in the corner. Hi, Erwin. Hi, buddy. Erwin Reeves, you made the trek across the hall. to help facilitate our conversation around supporting microenterprise communities and entrepreneurs. Tell me a little bit about your experience in there.
I'd be remiss if I didn't start off with a Timekeeper Appreciation Day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Barbara Maxwell, for all your work. So we basically went off of 4 separate questions that we kind of used to shape our conversation. We had a bank, a CDFI, and then a small business kind of technical assistance service provider. It's Jennifer, she does everything. So you put the hat on where it applies. But it's how do you serve micro enterprises, because that's different than actually regular small businesses. A small business can be 3 to 4 employees. There are a lot of solopreneurs. And so how do you serve those smaller businesses, because their needs are a little bit different. They really mirror the layout, the capital perspective, and the overall financial perspective of the individual versus thinking of it just outside of a business. So that was one of the questions. And then what are the barriers that those businesses face? And then initiatives to help them be successful. And then how can organizations collaborate? And those are kind of some of the basic questions I use when I do workshops and events. And then we follow that up with a wish list from the service provider on what they would like to see that would be available for them, their organization, to serve the population that they're working with. And some of the things that we discovered, it was new for some of the folks that were in the room with us. We were a very small but mighty group. But people understanding that disparity as it relates to access to capital and business consulting services or technical assistance still exists to this day. And it typically goes along race, but it can also include gender from time to time. And that they're really significant depending on the timing. Small businesses, primarily solopreneurs, need low-cost access to capital. That's very difficult in a rising interest rate environment. So if your margins are already thin, you're already struggling, and now the interest rate has gone up. That's something that's external. Oh, I forgot, we talked about the 5 C's of credit, and I won't bore you with those 5 C's. But one of those 5 C's is conditions, and it's an external component that a business owner does not have the opportunity to have any control around, and as a result can have a significant negative impact, and interest rates is one example of that. And that there are several programs to help businesses focused specifically on marginalized businesses, but they don't always get access to that information and access to that capital. And it's a matter of getting them in a position so that they can learn more about it before they make some fatal decisions for their business. That lack of knowledge, that lack of access creates opportunities for predators and sets up those small businesses to be less successful than they possibly can be. And that from a financial standpoint, financial institution standpoint, there's a strong need for alternative underwriting outside of the traditional 5 C's, because sometimes smaller businesses, especially startup businesses and emerging businesses, they can't really keep up with their capital need because they're growing too fast. And so if banks could become more flexible, that's a way for those services or those businesses to get access to capital. Partnerships among CDFIs, that's community development financial institutions, and nonprofit service providers are a key to help kind of bridge that gap. And then partnerships with financial institutions with those additional services helps take it a little bit further, and they can reach down and help more businesses. At the end of the day, there needs to still be trust built amongst the financial institutions so that small businesses feel comfortable going into the financial institutions, and that financial institutions feel comfortable lending to small businesses.
Awesome, thank you. Yes, bringing it back to trust, and access is another key word that when folks have access to resources, access to capital, growth can happen incredibly fast. I remember your story at the end of the day of someone that you lent to and exploded, and that their success story speaks for themselves. We have a little bit of time before I open it up to audience Q&A, so I'm going to give the panel an audible, and I'm going to ask you one more question. When you get back to the office tomorrow or later today, depending on how hardworking you are, knowing that I won't be back to my office until maybe Thursday. Anyway, what is one thing that you are going to put into your search engine of choice, or an email that you are going to start drafting? What is something that you want to take from your conversation and infuse it into your work? And because Tierra had the most time to think about this, just kidding. It's been the longest since she talked. I'm going to ask Tierra, please, what's something that you're looking forward to learning more about?
Is this on?
It better be.
No.
Hello. Awesome. So the first thing I'm doing is finishing my goal for this year, which is creating more partnerships. So like I said, we can't do the work alone. When it comes to homeownership, we have organizations focusing on the supply, realtists focusing on selling the houses, lenders focusing on the underwriting, and then, people like me helping people get approved. So that partnership aspect is so important. And so that's one thing that I will be doing, is connecting with the people that I've met here and from the previous 3 or 4 events. But yes, making those connections so that we can collaborate and get increase the amount of Black homeownership.
Connections. I love it. Thank you. Cristina, what are you doing when you get back to the office?
I'm going to echo Tierra and just say connections as well. In my role at WaFd Bank, I'm more of somebody who will take some action and start implementing changes. So I really want to make sure that the changes that I'm thinking of actually resonate. So connecting with community partners will be key in that.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you. Derek, what are you doing when you get back to the office?
Yeah, 2 things actually. One of the themes that came up in our conversation was this concept of advocacy, right? Not just providing or looking for resources for formerly incarcerated, but also how do we forge relationships with other partners. One of the things we recognized in the room, in the workshop, was that 90% of all of the participants were connected through Financial Empowerment Network. And there are resources not only available on the site, but we also recognize that we didn't know each other. So one of the things I want to do is to connect and reach out to those that came here, and hopefully we can pick up some additional cards before you leave, but to figure out ways to work more collaboratively in the work that we do.
I love it. Shout out to the attendee list that is on the QR codes in your programs. John, what are you doing when you get back to the office?
Yes, I think for me personally, the concept of checking yourself is something that really resonated. And in regards to the content that I provide out to the public when I provide workshops on financial education, it's something that I regularly try to revisit the content, make changes as much as I can, but it's these moments where I get to come to these kind of forums, listen to people who can really speak on a level that is something that can provide me with another opportunity to do that sort of checking. And then I'm going to go back and basically work on that and essentially make sure that my content, the stuff that I'm providing out and putting out into the public, is something that's going to be received well.
Absolutely. I love a little bit of self-reflection. It's fantastic. Erwin, your office is a long way from here.
A long way.
What are you doing when you get back to your office?
Check email.
Yeah. And that's all we have time. No. Is there an email that you're looking for? Is there a Google search that you're going to pull up?
No, in reality, looking for ways to bring both CDFIs and nonprofit service providers and banks together. That's really the basis of the work that we do, and really focused on smaller businesses, and not to separate microenterprise from that, because that is a greater challenge, but finding a way to kind of meld that so that we can at least have a conversation. Banks want to do small business loans, small business owners want to get loans, even microenterprise. capital is a challenge, and just trying to find a way to blend an event that will enable everyone to kind of get a little bit out of that and be able to create more opportunity and access, both for that as well as having bank support, capacity building for nonprofit organizations so they can provide more services.
Here for capacity building. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the flexibility of our panel for answering my last minute question. Thank you. Thank you all. We have a few minutes. I want to hear from the room. We have mic runners that are becoming available right now. What were some of your takeaways? What did you pick up that you feel connected to? What are some connections that you've built with your friends here, either at your old table or your new table, that you're excited about? What happened yesterday that you want to give a shout out on? Andrea, and then
Yeah, hi. Andrea Alexander, Tribal Technology Training, Makah Tribal member. And Erwin, I really like what you say about capacity building for nonprofits. We have a lot of new Native nonprofits in the state. It's been a real vibrant community, but there's a lot of capacity building that's needed. So I appreciate that, because I try to run my nonprofit as a small business, and that's kind of where I came from, is as a businesswoman running my own business. But one of the policy issues that the Nonprofit Institute of Washington is looking at is the cost reimbursement basis. I do a lot of government contracting for my services. So I hire grassroots people. It takes us so long to get paid. We get the contract in months and months. It's the hurry up and wait. But, again, as poor folks, it's not like we have the capital to finance this work that's really needing our community to work and partner with CDFIs and make things happen. So I'd just like to hear any comments folks have about that issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I encourage folks to connect. I don't know if our panel is in the position to answer questions. Seeing blank stares.
To answer some questions, I can address that a little bit from the standpoint that there's, I'll speak specifically with financial institutions. As I said yesterday, you want to make sure you're aligning with that partner and finding folks that are interested in doing some of the same things that you are. That may mean running into a couple of closed doors from time to time and putting in a little bit of work as it relates to due diligence so that there's an understanding of the connection between. One of the things that happens with financial institutions is that typically they say they don't want to pay for wages, they don't want to pay for personnel, but you can't run a program without a person. 80% of the cost is a person. And so how you tell that story is what provides that opportunity for that enlightenment to take place. And so they're slowly starting to understand, but banks run on really thin margins. They do make a lot of money, but you let that margin turn just a little bit, and there are a lot of unhappy people, and that means people lose their jobs. And so people guard that very closely. So when you're creating these partnerships and you're doing your outreach, look at the people that you're partnering with to provide that service to kind of help build on that. You're talking about a lot of startup organizations, so they're going to have more of a challenge in getting funds, so they should make sure that they're partnering with someone that is strong. So that they're bringing something to the table that says, hey, we have a specific thing that we can do. We need your support. We're getting funding from the state. We're getting funding from the county, funding from the feds. This would help bridge that gap so that banks don't think that they're solely providing all of the funding to take place for that, but it's actually being layered with other services, other funders that can then help provide that service. And so having strength to balance out, especially for startup organizations, very much like you are a small business. The difference is what you do with your profits is different. You're a small business. You have to operate that way.
In protection of our time, is this on the same topic? Okay, I'm gonna give you 37 seconents.
Advocacy opportunity, because a lot of nonprofits deal with this in their contracting with government. The state of Oregon just went through a big advocacy campaign to change the way that nonprofits are paid through the state. So I can send that information to you, and this would be a great thing for this group to look at together.
Love it. That was less than 37 seconds. I think Derek has a comment, and then you are next, my man.
I can do it in 15.
You got 15 seconds.
So Andrea, just my business is consulting. We provide capacity building for nonprofits and access resources. I'm not sure what's happening in the rest of the state, and I'm not sure where you are. But since the pandemic, I know at least in King County, they've taken a look at issues of cost reimbursement for nonprofits because they know they don't have a reserve fund in the way that businesses and other microenterprises do. And so I know in King County, they're making an intentional effort to speed up the cost reimbursement process for nonprofits. Are you in King County? Statewide? Okay. But anyway, just wanted to add that.
I think that was approximately 23 seconds. Just kidding. I heavily encourage everyone to check out your attendee directory to build connections when you get back to the office. You have waited patiently. I appreciate you. Tell me about your reflections.
All right. My name is Jarrell Jones. I'm here representing Justice Involved Individuals. I work with the Black Prisoners Caucus Community Group, and I have my own LLC, Credit Revolution Education Directors. So my story, I'm keep it kind of short here. Made a mistake doing a robbery when I was 19 years old. So a lot of crimes that are happening in our neighborhood is poverty induced. So what I'm here doing is through my LLC is giving education to our youth and to folks that just don't have no knowledge about financial, anything about finances, and especially with credit. Credit affects a lot of things. Without credit, you can't get a house, you can't get a car, you can't get a livable wage career. There's a lot of things you're kept out of, and because of that, so many people today are just feeling so much under pressure, and this is how crimes are being committed. So I'm here to help support those that don't have that education, and how we can actually help out, and this is for Derek, how we can actually help out our brothers and sisters that are incarcerated or on the verge of being incarcerated is supporting one another in our pursuit to give this education to these guys so we don't have to continue making these mistakes. We could break the cycle. Mm-hmm. So I'm here to support in that cause.
Yeah, I'll give it out. I want to echo that very few issues that we've talked about today are single faceted. Everything is integrated as a system that makes things more complicated to solve any individual issue. So I appreciate that call out that poverty has more implications than just a lack of money. So thank you, I appreciate that. We have Mike already in the back, and then we have a hand up here.
Hi, I'm Clinton from Your Money Matters mentoring program. One of the things that I want to appreciate, I thank Jennifer, wherever she's at, she said something yesterday that banks aren't social services. And I had to really reflect on that, because when we're in the nonprofit sector, we always looking for funding, we're looking for money, and sometimes, we're expecting, our partners to be what we need instead of being who they are. And so thank you for reminding me, because I work with a lot of banks and credit unions and financial institutions. And the other thing is, thank you, Erwin, sharpening the story, telling the story. We work a lot with individuals who have some very unique stories and some heartstring pulling stories, but just remembering to tell the story, tell the work that we do. And I think that for us as an organization, we could definitely get better at that. And then the other thing was, I really appreciate the fact that we brought the people into the room, we brought the stories into the room, because I had never heard about trauma. Well, I knew it, but there was a term we were using yesterday related. Yeah, I know trauma, but it was related to money. Well, trauma-informed poverty, right? And so it reaffirmed for me that our organization is on the right road, because I wasn't calling it that, but the way that I designed our curriculum, I didn't even know it was really addressing that, because we talked a lot yesterday about, we talk a lot about mindsets and how we start working on helping them to identify and relate and connect to, before we get to here's a FICO score and here's a credit score, what's their story and how do we help pull that out of them. So that really helped me yesterday. As I'm leading the organization to what's the next step for us, really focusing more in the coming years. And I was telling Latanya yesterday, how do we really address that trauma? Because we all work with individuals that have that trauma. And the last thing is, someone said yesterday that the takeaway that I got was that money is something that we will be, I'm misquoting it, but basically money is something that we will be dealing with most of our life, right? And so how do we help individuals with that? And so it was really great yesterday, so thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Clinton. The one word that I'm going to pull out of that is intention, using intention as we're building programs, and I love that. Thank you. Milady, you have a microphone. That means you talk.
Yes. I have a question for Derek, actually. So part of my work as the Special Populations Program Supervisor is to gain deeper awareness and understanding about the challenges that our BIPOC youth face, all disadvantaged, underserved youth. And I have to admit the part that I have the least knowledge on is probably our justice-involved youth. The gentleman's comment back here really resonated with me, because that's what I want to, I don't want to assume anything, right? I want to know from an expert like yourself and others in the room what you feel are the most important foundational pieces that a person like myself that is in a position where I can impact knowledge and awareness through informing educators who then teach this content to our BIPOC youth. What are the pieces that you think are the most important in terms of bringing awareness of financial education? What are the things that they should be, that I should not leave out of the resource table?
Yeah. One of the things that was great to see at our session was the fact that we had individuals who had been formerly incarcerated that were a part of the conversation. In the work that we do, we can focus either on resources or relationships. In the last couple of years, the focus has been, especially during the pandemic, has been, and this has been shown to be true, that the more trusted relationships you have, that has more to do with the recidivism rate than the resources that can be received when they get out. If they can forge 5 to 7 significant relationships after they've been released from incarceration, that can do more to reduce the recidivism rate than anything else. Okay. I would encourage folks to get to know, to network, to befriend, be an advocate, fight against NIMBY opposition in our communities where we have halfway houses. Advocate for those that are still behind bars. In fact, Anthony brought up some wonderful comments to help us kind of understand what that's like. But I would focus on relationships and collaboration and get to know their story. I think I heard someone mention that as well. I don't know if that.
No, that helps tremendously. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you. A big applause there. And I think we have time for one more, and I saw that Jenna Finesse has her hand up.
I do. Speaking to what my lady said, one of the things that I really enjoyed about this is the intentionality and the language that we are using. I'm learning, just like Clinton said, when we start using certain language, people feel more like they belong. We're not saying ex-offenders anymore. We're saying, justice involved. That speaks volumes, right? And it shows the value in the person, the individual. So I think that's a good point that we need to continue, being real intentional about the language that we're using and how we're changing the way that we think so that folks feel like they belong in the conversation. Because a lot of these folks around the table that were in some of these different breakouts, we didn't know they were justice informed, and we probably wouldn't. And we've been around these folks for quite some time, but because they felt comfortable saying, "I'm justice informed," they leaned into that conversation. So we need to be super intentional about the language that we're using, so folks feel like they actually belong.
I love it. I love it. And I just caught a glimpse from my timekeeper. She hasn't given me any cards, but I think we're actually 1 minute over. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Well, I have a deep appreciation for everyone who shared their thoughts up on stage, everyone who shared their reflections in the audience. I encourage everyone, if you have a reflection that you didn't share, or if you just want to make your reflection more permanent, write it on a sticky note, add it to our wonderful large pads of thought. I forgot what we're actually calling them. But the person who does know what we're calling them is Alex. And I believe that my job is to hand it over now
to Mr.
Alex Yang. One more round of applause for everyone.
That's right.
For our facilitators.